Hello guys, welcome to another video. The launch of 3.24 Necropolis League is just around the corner, and that means a fresh league start is upon us all. Today's video is something a little bit different, and this has been inspired by a comment from Dimitris6214, who asks to explore niche defensive layers that are viable in league start scenarios. Now, I'm not really sure about niche specifically because most of a lot of the niche defenses that are in Path of Exile are tied to specific ascendancies or build archetypes that can make the best use of them. But this got me thinking a little bit about different mechanics that I use or would use at a league start, which are typically quite powerful early on and can help out a lot, especially when reaching the end of the campaign and beginning to scale up map tiers as you face more and more difficult monsters. In a lot of cases, these mechanics may even be quite weak into the endgame when other options have vastly outscaled them, which is why you may not see them in build guides that don't have a lot of depth for the leveling and progression portions of a build. There's plenty of mechanics that could make it into this list, but I've picked out a few to highlight in this video. If you make use of some other defensive mechanics which are not mentioned here, especially those that are efficient to use at league start, drop a comment and I'll try to provide visibility for those comments so everybody else can see them as well. So let's begin with some builds on the right side of the passive tree. These builds are going to typically be relying on evasion and spell suppression defensively. And starting with spell suppression, the mastery for chance to suppress spell damage is lucky is one of the strongest single point passive spend in early progression. It's actually kind of ridiculous how much value you can gain out of this mastery. As soon as you allocate your first spell suppression wheel during leveling, you're going to want to immediately take this mastery. And what this mastery does is that whenever you are hit by a spell, your chance to suppress spell damage will be rolled twice, choosing the favourable outcome. Here's a chart with some example numbers for actual spell suppression on the left and effective spell suppression with the mastery allocated on the right. So with the entrench wheel taken from the south, with just the notable and the small node allocated, you'll have 17% chance to suppress spell damage. And with the mastery taken, you have an effective chance of 31%. Then with the full instinct wheel taken near the top of the tree, you'll have 22% chance to suppress spell damage. And with this mastery taken, you'll have an effective chance of 39%. And with the full inveterate wheel taken, which is the one that most ranger builds will take, you'll have 39% chance to suppress spell damage. And with the lucky mastery allocated, this will improve to an effective chance of 63%. Then we have 50% chance to suppress spell damage as an example here, which is an effective 75% chance to suppress spell damage with the mastery taken. So you can see how much effective spell suppression chance is being gained by spending a single point on this mastery. And this makes it such a powerful tool for early progression, especially at league start when your gear is typically lacking and you don't have access to leveling gear. That's a very, very strong mastery. So let's stay with spell suppression and talk about a fairly common unique item, that's the Elevore helmet. This helmet grants a large chunk of spell suppression chance and some elemental ailment avoidance chance there too, but most importantly is this line right here. Recover 100 to 200 life when you suppress spell damage. This is an incredibly powerful stat, especially if you can get a good roll on the amount of life recovered. Every time you successfully roll chance to suppress an incoming spell hit, you'll recover life after taking the hit. This is instant recovery, so it's not prevented by map modifiers such as less life recovery rate. And whilst this is not a very powerful tool against large spell hits, its effectiveness greatly improves in the context of leveling through early maps where you often encounter packs of mobs that send a flurry of spells your way. A lot of these spells hitting the character at once is dangerous, and this is very often how you die at maps, getting shotgunned by a bunch of incoming spells at the same time. This mod is going to save you a lot of the time as long as you have a decently high chance to suppress spell damage, so this one pairs very well with the aforementioned lucky suppression mastery. You can also continue to use Elevore deep into progression if you have no interest in bossing, for example, and you just want to keep XPing in tier 16s. This helmet will continue to provide a very valuable defensive layer. Okay, let's stay on the right side of the tree for a moment and talk about evasion. Dread Banner is a reservation skill which provides an offensive aura that will lessen the accuracy of monsters near your character, improving the effectiveness of your evasion rating. This can be very useful early on, especially at the relatively low cost of 10% reservation, but unlike some of the other mechanics on this list, Dread Banner's usefulness doesn't really fall off, so its defensive benefit is not really specific to League start or early game progression, but I thought it would be nice to mention it here. Most of the builds that will be using Dread Banner defensively are unlikely to be benefiting from the Impale chance portion of the skill, and because Dread Banner is an aura skill which affects you and your allies, you can actually support it with Generosity support. Generosity will prevent Dread Banner from applying its Impale portion of the skill to you, but in return it will grant a very substantial amount of aura effect to the defensive less accuracy portion of the skill. And even better still is that Generosity has no cost and reservation multiplier. I'll also mention that with Dread Banner being a strength skill gem, it's often the case that you won't have the stats to level this gem up early on, but fear not. Dread Banner's less accuracy aura doesn't scale a huge amount with gem levels, and is powerful even at level 1, applying 15% less accuracy to nearby enemies. A source of inflicting blind on monsters is a great addition too. Blind will also lessen a monster's accuracy, whilst having the added bonus of also lessening a monster's evasion rating too, so if you're an attack build, you gain the extra benefit there if you're not capped on hit chance. Base Blind will lessen accuracy and evasion rating by 20%. Here's a graph for evade chance with the monster's accuracy on the left and a character's evasion rating at the top. You can see on the left of the graph that normal monsters in a tier 1 map have 290 accuracy rating, scaling up to 538 accuracy rating in tier 16. As an example then, a character with 7500 evasion rating has a 64.2% chance to evade an attack against an average monster in a tier 1 map. If the monster was in range of a level 1 Dread Banner and was blinded, the monster's accuracy rating goes from 290 down to 197, and the character's evade chance would improve to around 73%. You'd need around 4000 extra evasion rating to achieve the same amount of evade chance without Dread Banner or Blind, so you can see how effective those mechanics can be. Alright, let's move over to the left side of the tree for a moment and talk about a mastery for armor and energy shield that's pretty undervalued in my opinion. This one does have a prerequisite of having to use armor and energy shield gear pieces in your helmet, gloves and boot slots. But this mastery will provide 100% increased armor and energy shield from your equipped body armor. The mileage that you get out of this mastery will vary based on the stats of your body armor and any other increases to armor or energy shield that you have in your build. But defensively, this large of an increase early on can mean a lot more mitigation against physical hits, and also potentially a lot more guard from Molten Shell as well. Not to mention the potential increase to effective health from Energy Shield. I'd also like to point out here that although the mastery requires you to have armor and Energy Shield on your helm, gloves and boots, it doesn't mean that you have to use a hybrid armor and Energy Shield body armor. You can actually make use of a pure armor chest piece to gain a lot of armor from this mastery, or a pure Energy Shield body armor to gain a large chunk of Energy Shield instead. Up next is Endurance Charge Generation. This is not particular to any location on the tree or any type of build specifically, but getting a way to gain endurance charges in your build is going to provide a boost to your physical mitigation, which is often one of the weakest parts of a League start build defensively. One of my favourite ways to get endurance charge generation into a build, especially early on, is to be on the lookout for betrayal, rings and amulets, which you can unveil for the minimum endurance charge modifier. When this mod is unveiled, it also has a small chance to gain an endurance charge on kill, making it very useful while mapping. I actually use this tech on my Chain DD Inquisitor in Affliction to help boost my physical mitigation on the journey to level 100. And speaking of physical mitigation and betrayal, you're going to want to try to rush to obtain both Corel and Gravicious unveils so that you can make use of those physical damage taken as elemental modifiers. Corel's modifier is a helmet prefix which makes a portion of physical damage from hits be taken as fire damage instead, whilst the Gravicious mod is a body armor prefix which makes a percentage of physical damage from hits be taken as lightning damage and another percentage be taken as fire damage. Once again, these make a very substantial difference to your physical mitigation. In the case of builds that pretty much only rely on evasion, any damage that's shifted to be taken as elemental instead can essentially be viewed as a less physical damage taken from hits modifier at 75% of its value, assuming resistances are capped at their base values. Whilst builds that use Armour gain even more out of this, because not only is the portion of damage taken as elemental being mitigated by resistances, but Armour also becomes more effective against the resulting smaller hit of physical damage, providing more mitigation than it otherwise would have. Lastly, let's discuss Flasks. This one is not really specific to League Start, but making use of the defensive flasks like a Granite or Jade Flask as soon as you get it in the campaign is going to make you feel so much tankier, as the amount of armour or evasion it's granting at that stage of progression is just enormous compared to not just what you would normally have on your character at that point, but also against the average monster damage and accuracy rating. Make sure you upgrade your life flasks routinely too, and grab a bleed removal mod as soon as possible. I like to make sure I have a bleed removal life flask by the midway point of Act 4, where some monsters in zones like the Grand Arena and the Belly of the Beast begin to regularly inflict dangerous bleeds with their attacks. And really, many things could have made it onto this list, but hopefully this will provide some useful tools to prevent some of those unnecessary deaths at League Start, and help you boost your defences early so you're ready to tackle maps head on. I'm bound to have missed out some of the useful League Start defences from this list, so as I mentioned before, do comment below and I'll try to make sure those comments are as visible as possible for everyone else. Thank you to my patrons for your support, I appreciate you. If you'd like to join them and support the growth of this channel, you can by heading over to the new Patreon that I've set up, the link is in the description below. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.